It's High 97, TT Torres.
Bobby Trends.
We are in the building,
Yeah.
and the biggest case happening right now is the Tekashi 6ix9ine federal case. He went on trial this week to testify against the gang members,
Right.
9 Treyway. And I want to bring Lisa Evers.
There we go.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, guys.
I
Great to be here with you.
I wanted to bring her on the show today, Trents, because she and I spoke last night for about 45 minutes just going over the case, because there were some things yesterday that were brought out and said on trial from Tekashi 6ix9ine. And I said to Lisa, there's more to this than meets the eye, just understanding how the feds work. And Lisa had some great perspectives, and I'm like, Lisa, we got to really break this down on the show today. And, you know, I was on the radio earlier, and I was letting everybody know at 7 o'clock, this is what we were going to do.
Right.
And people were texting me like crazy.
Yeah, my phone was blowing up.
All of my DMs. And I wanted you to come on, Lisa, to basically tell us, what exactly did you witness in the courtroom from Tekashi 6ix9ine? I want you to specifically talk about his body language, his demeanor, what you got from watching him, from being inside the courtroom since the trial began.
Well, I was in the courtroom yesterday. I haven't been able to be there every day because of working as a reporter for Fox 5 and also when we're doing our Street Soldier shows. But, TT, I think the thing people have to understand is that Tekashi is not on trial. He's already pleaded guilty to 9 serious felony counts. He's already been sentenced to, he's already received a sentence of 47 years to life for those crimes that he pleaded guilty to. So he's now the government's star witness in helping put away his other co-defendants, the other 5 co-defendants in this Treyway gang case.
But here's the thing. He was sentenced to 47 years to life, right?
Right.
But because he is now cooperating with the police, that sentence can be reduced to possibly time served.
Exactly. But he's cooperating. It's not with the police. He's cooperating as a government witness for the U.S. attorney in the Southern District. And anybody who's been through a federal case, they know the Southern District, how tough it is. And the Eastern District, these federal prosecutors don't even take a case unless they have, you know, a very strong chance, more than 90% of winning. They win more than 90% of their cases. Right. So you asked me about Tekashi in court, and he's, you know, the colors are gone from the hair. The guy who's in the picture in the video that I posted from evidence on my Instagram at Lisa Evers. Sorry, guys, give a little plug. There, you know, that bravado, that
persona
that he had
is gone,
totally gone. He was in a blue V-neck, you know, the prison uniform, blue V-neck, white T-shirt underneath. I couldn't tell whether or not he was wearing a vest or anything underneath it. He has U.S. Marshals. He wasn't even brought in the way that regular prisoners are brought into the courtroom. He was brought in through a secret tunnel. And then on the stand, he's sipping a bottle of water, you know, just sipping a bottle of water, listening to the questions of the prosecutor, kind of moving around.
Very confident is what I'm getting.
Extremely confident, because keep in mind, too, this is a federal courtroom which is super imposing. It's not like 100 Center Street, you know, Manhattan Criminal Court, where it's kind of like you feel like it's the subway, only it's the court and it's the streets. And it's very intimidating. And almost half the courtroom was filled with people who appeared to have Bloods affiliation. There was a lot, let me just say, there was a lot of red. I'm not saying they all were, but they seemed to be on the side of the 2 defendants. So on what would have been his side, you know, it's like a wedding almost in these court cases. You know, one family on one side, another family on the other side, was pretty much empty, except for a few reporters and some legal people. So I was expecting him, when I saw him, I'm like, he's got to be feeling, you know, everybody keeps talking about death sentences. His sister has supposedly received death threats. The concerns about his safety, all the lengths that the feds are going to protect him, and yet he seemed like somebody would be in a classroom, bored by the lecture or bored by what the teacher was doing, but
not fazed by it.
Yeah, totally not fazed.
Which to me, that says that he knew exactly what he was there for and what he was doing, and he was well prepared for this.
I think not only was he well prepared, but the feds were very well prepared. I'm blown away, TT, as we talked on the phone last night. I'm blown away by the amount of evidence, the volume of evidence that they presented. We're talking audio, which people think, you know, audio, phone calls, videos, not just the stuff that's out there on social media.
Not the stuff that's out there on social media. I'm glad you made that point. But these videos and these pictures and things that they have was so clear as if they were right there in the room.
Right, and the case, just so people understand what happened, because with these federal cases, this is a racketeering case. It's a conspiracy case. This isn't like somebody shot and killed a person and now they're on trial for murder. They're on trial for attempted murder. They're on trial for murder conspiracy. This entire group of co-defendants, of which Tekashi was one, they're being charged with drug trafficking, with gun trafficking, and with a series of these incidents that we've all seen over the last 2 years. And all this happened very, very fast. Because remember, Gummo was the fall of 2017 when that all started. A year later, these guys are all arrested, and that was in November. And now we're seeing, and some of them have already been sentenced and taken pleas.
So the biggest question that I have gotten from Twitter and Instagram, and Trends, you might have gotten this question too. The biggest question people had for me is that, how long was he working with the feds? He said on the stand that he started cooperating the day after they got busted, right?
He said that he basically started cooperating the day after they were arrested, which would have been like last November. Most attorneys that I've spoken to, and we're going to do a big episode of Street Soldiers on this with a great lawyer who's done a lot of cases with the feds and really break this whole thing down. That says that's very fast, that's extremely fast. But once he started to cooperate, then they start to, the U.S. attorney, the prosecutors, they start to talk to him. Who do you know? What happened? But meantime, they've already got all of this evidence.
But my question is, could it have been a strong possibility that Tekashi 6ix9ine was working with the feds way before everybody got arrested?
Well, Titi, that's the word on the street. I have no evidence of that, and I have no confirmation of that from any official or from anyone who I would trust to have direct knowledge of that, but that's what people are saying on the streets. Yeah. That's what people are texting me. That's what people are saying.
And the reason why I guess people are saying this is because the evidence is so clear. Like the audio, the pictures, it's like physically being in the room. So was he mic'd up and wired up when he was around all of these people, and potentially have been the mold for the entire case, like the person that they used to take everybody down, and he.
Well, okay, to that point, and to be fair, to be fair, they started looking at Treyway. They started looking at 9 Trey since 2013. And what people have to understand is they think they'll think, commit a crime. If I'm not caught right away or for a while or after a year or so, it's not going, I'm clear, nothing's going to happen. That's not the case. Especially if you're part of a gang, if you're part of an organized criminal, any type of crew, whatever you want to call it. If you're working with other people in the commission of what is a crime or what we all accept as crime, drug dealing, gun running, shooting people, killing people, these kinds of things, if you think you got away with it, you probably didn't. They're probably watching you. They're probably waiting until they build a strong enough case like this where they have piles of photos, piles of video surveillance. And the technology is so good right now. I mean, look at what we can do with our phones. You look at throwback pictures and you're like, wow, even that was with a camera and look at how bad that was. The technology is incredible now. The technology that law enforcement has that we know about, that we, as journalists know about, that came into play, that came into our daily lives, especially here in New York, after 9/11 to fight terrorism, would blow people's minds away. Everybody knows about video cameras, in stores. Do they understand the streets? Do they understand all of Manhattan is wired? Do they understand there's license plate readers that can put you, as they use to help place the Crack the Chinks case? There's license plate readers that can put you in a car at a certain place at a certain time. There's technology that can tell when shots are fired and where shots are fired. So there was a lot of actual criminal activity going on. It wasn't as if this was just, Tekashi set up people who were not involved in the life. These guys were involved in, apparently, from everything that they have confessed to, because some of them have already pleaded guilty, were involved in the street. They were in the streets. They were involved in the street life. But him getting involved in it took it to a whole different level.
Tekashi 6ix9ine brought it to mainstream, right?
He totally brought it to mainstream, and he also brought it into hip hop.
Yeah.
Because remember, most of these, according to the court records, the gang members who have, and I say that when I say that I use the term of the ones who've admitted to it, and then the other ones who are alleged to have been involved in this activity, they were dealing drugs, they were running guns, they were doing those kinds of things long before Tekashi ever got involved. But then when he burst onto the scene, he needed this street cred. Again, all according to court testimony, not my opinion. When he burst onto the scene and he needed the street cred, he testified he bought a bunch of 30 red bandanas for that famous video in Bushwick, and gave them out. And then Treyway saw him as a cash cow because he blew up so fast.
And that brings me to my other question, which a lot of people have speculated that he was actually someone that was used by the feds to get inside the world of hip hop. How does it operate? How do they get security? How do they move the money around? Like, all of this was a setup from the beginning. And I don't know if you could speak to that, Lisa, but that's what the streets are saying. Like, this guy was someone that they pumped up to be this big star and to give them the insight on how it works as it relates to hip hop.
Well, I think their first goal, their first target was to get inside 9 Trey. I think that's what they were looking at. They had, in the indictment, the defendants were indicted on charges going back to 2013, which is way before Tekashi was still a teenager. It was way before he even knew them, had even met them. And I think that it was a question of the fact that, here he comes along and it just turned into a completely different thing. And remember, even though the streets and a lot of people are saying, they're like, oh, well, Tekashi wasn't really a gangster. He was never a real gang member, all of this type of thing. The fact of the matter is he had some serious charges on his record. He had some serious legal problems already.
That mysteriously went away.
Well, they went through, they got the lighter end of everything.
Right. So Tekashi 6ix9ine was up for, what was it, rape allegation, sexual assault allegation.
Sexual assault with a minor.
Sexual assault allegation, sexual assault with a minor, which he got very little time for.
Supposedly community service.
Community service. So this is why a lot of people speculated that he was working with the feds from day one.
But Titi, with the case with the teenage girl, that terrible case with the 13-year-old girl, and again, I think we talk about certain things, and there's a lot of focus on criminal justice injustices and reform, which is a very, very important thing. But there are some bad things that happen, like sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl is disgusting to anybody with a heart and a conscience. So it's like that was a state case that came out of the Manhattan DA. But I will say, to your point, when you are involved in a state case and a federal case, the state case gets put on freeze until all of the federal things are done, or they'll use the different mechanisms that the courts have and the judicial system has to delay things to see what's going on.
But they didn't delay his sexual case. It
kept going, but it got the very minimum.
Right.
It went on the easy pass route.
And in that courtroom, Lisa, you were saying that he was brought in through a secret tunnel. Like, why so heavy the security?
The security because of the death threats.
They not
couldn't
normal.
keep him. Like, normally in a federal case, he would have been kept very close by at MCC, which is right there. And you remember when El Chapo was on trial, they decided they had to keep him actually in the court in the basement because the security was so crazy. Well, with him, they were afraid of him escaping. So with 6ix9ine, they are keeping him in a separate facility for people who are high-level government informants, people who are cooperators, and it is ultra secured by the U.S. Marshals, and it's at an undisclosed location. He was brought in not in the way typically that other prisoners are brought in. And the other thing, Bobby, I'm glad you asked about that, because the other thing is when I went into the court, you go into the courtroom, when you go through federal court, as a spectator, anybody except a lawyer or a member of law enforcement, I go in, before I go in now, I take off, it's like going into a jail. I take off my jewelry, I take off my earrings, any metal that I have on, I put in my bag, so take my coat off. You basically strip down. Phones have to be off. You have to surrender your phone when you go in. You go through a really secure secure
you
search.
would think a courtroom is already a very secure place.
But they
so-
weren't taking any chances with this, and it shows you how they're looking at this case, how seriously they're taking it, because you go through that on the ground floor coming in. I went up to the floor when you go up to the floor where the trial is, you go through another checkpoint.
Wow.
With two more court officers, where you have to go through the exact same entire thing all over again. So they were very concerned that something would happen, that while he was on the stand there, that somebody might have smuggled in a piece or smuggled in something and tried to take him out while he was on the stand.
And he's a very important piece to this.
Extremely important piece to this whole.
So let's talk
case.
about this case. Let's talk about this puzzle, right? Because we saw online that he mentioned Jim Jones, Cardi B, Casanova, 50 Cent. He said so many other artists' names while he was on the stand. Why was that even in question?
Well, I think part of the first of all, when he said Jim Jones, he goes, Jim Jones is a retired rapper. That was the line that got a lot of play on social media because people thought that was amusing. But then when they said he's a member of he's a member of Treyway, of 9 Trey, and Tekashi said yes, he's a member of 9 Trey. He's also a member of 9 Trey. So the reason that was relevant was because there was audio that was presented by the prosecutors against the Malmurda, Jamel Jones, that he was having a conversation with Jim Jones, the rapper, and where they were talking about violating Tekashi because he was out of control, because the security couldn't control him, because it was getting dangerous. And there was audio, which is on my Instagram, which I put out so people could hear it, because there was a lot of confusion about it, and it was presented in open court. So it wasn't something that was hidden that I wanted to put out there to throw shade on anybody. It was just like, this is the reality. This is how deep this is going. So they were using that, and Malmurda has already pleaded guilty and is awaiting his sentencing. So they were building, that's part of that conspiracy case, because they have both of them on the audio saying that Tekashi, that 6ix9ine should be violated, a couple times. Violated, yes, he should be violated. And Jim appears to be giving Malmurda some advice too about how to handle the media and a couple of other things like somebody would do as a friend, but it put him squarely in the conspiracy, according to the legal expert I spoke with.
So now that implicates Jim Jones in a conspiracy. So I guess the question that everybody is having, how would this case have a ripple effect on hip hop? Because obviously they're asking about other artists, which means that there must be something out there that they want to tie other artists in. How would that affect the culture, especially the artists here in New York?
Well, I think, for example, let me just address the Cardi, him naming Cardi. He didn't say she was a member of 9 Trey. He said she's a Bloods member. Cardi has said how many times before, back in the day, she was a member of the Bloods, and whatever. So that there was no reason for him to even bring her up in court, except to say that he saw the he was bringing her name in there to show that gang affiliation could really, gang affiliation could help his career the way that it helped her career. That was the context. So with her, there was nothing criminal implied or anything like that. It was almost a gratuitous, just bringing in a famous name.
How would he even know that? Like, how would he even know that if they're not affiliated? They weren't even affiliated.
Just from publicly, because she's done, some of her lyrics. She's done a number of videos. So
he was trying to basically paint the picture to the jurors that, oh yeah, if you're gang affiliated, then your career would take off. And he used her as an example.
Well, and also for his own credibility, I believe, just from the strategy, as it appears, Sid listening to it, also to bolster his credibility as a star witness. Remember, his main goal is say everything he can say to put as many people away, to give them as many, as much, to help the feds get as much time against his co-defendants, but he has to appear credible. So if first he's Treyway, then he's just using the gang thing to bolster his music career. So this was a thing, I think, for him to bolster his credibility in front of the jury. More problematic is, you mentioned Casanova with one of the incidents that was involved in this as being from an opposing crew. Casanova, I've interviewed him. TT, I know you have. He's very close with the station. He's been very open about his past. He's also been very open about where he's at now in 2019 and what he's doing with his life. But I think I know there are people that are saying they're out to get hip hop. I don't think they're out to get hip hop. I think they're out to get anybody who is involved in criminal activity who is involved in hip hop. And I think it's a very critical moment right now because you look at hip hop is the number one streaming late 2018, officially declared the number one most popular streaming music in the world. Look at what's happened in the culture in the last year, all of the international influences.
Yeah,
Look
so
at
they want in. They want to know how it works.
Right.
Right now, the drug game is dried up.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Elliot Splitzer isn't on his payola scandal. So now it's all about hip hop.
Well,
so
there's a lot of money.
There's a lot of money. So now they want to get in to find out exactly what's going on, the inner works of it.
And let's be honest.
6ix9ine gave them the blueprint, basically the inside of how it works.
Well, they got to see in terms of the money, in terms of where the money is. He was, according to court testimony, if he got $250,000 for a show, like $150 would go to Nine Trey, according to what he testified. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what he was said.
What was the most intriguing part of his testimony that you just found fascinating? Like, wow, you're really telling this?
I think that I really think even more than one specific thing, it was just his demeanor, because he seemed very relaxed, extremely relaxed. He seemed very confident in his answers. He didn't seem surprised if he couldn't recall a question or whatever. He was very kind of fidgety, which some people might take as a sign of nervousness. To me, it appeared more like all right, I'm here again. It's the third, I'm here sitting
like he's
here.
annoyed.
When you hear the
Like, just
audio,
annoyed.
his whole voice is just different. Like, it's him, but he's just speaking very differently.
He's speaking very low. He's trying to portray himself as Daniel Hernandez, not as this rapper that was involved in shootings, and violence and this type of thing. And that overall demeanor was kind of, the color's gone from the hair, just being very like, listen, I'm not that person.
a whole different person. Yeah.
Right, that it's a persona.
So he answered the question about Trippie Redd, the beef that they've had over time. And he said that it was over jealousy or something to that nature. I was reading.
Right.
But he specifically talked about how he ordered a hit on Trippie Redd, Broad Daylight, in New York City. To me, I found that to be the most fascinating part of his testimony. Reason being, how comfortable are you enough to order a hit in broad daylight in Manhattan and not get caught?
Or think you're not going to get caught.
Or think you're not going to get caught? I cannot stop thinking in my mind that this kid knew that he had something bigger protecting him, and he wanted to set these guys up enough to say, do that.
That's a possibility. The other possibility is one thing, people said it about him from the very beginning too. His whether you like his music or not, his knack for promotion and for self-promotion was phenomenal. I mean, he had I don't want to call it a gift, but it's like he understood how to get hot really fast.
Yeah,
right. So if you want to commit a crime, the place to do it is in the crossroads of the world, in the middle of the day, in a place that's like so bold, so brazen, in the grand tradition of mafia hits and other hits. Look where they killed Pac, on the Las Vegas Strip. You know what I'm saying? So it's like these kind of statement type of moves or
but
promotion.
At this point, to shoot someone in broad daylight on 42nd Street to me for some Instagram fame, that to me that just seems a little bit too far-fetched. In my mind, I'm like, you had to have some type of protection or knowledge that you're good. You're going to be good at the end of the day. These dudes, not so much. But me, I'm good. So let me set them up and have them do this. That's how I'm looking at it. And I could be wrong. And this could just be my street conspiracy theories. But I just don't understand how a human being with a little bit of sense can think that they wouldn't get away with that when that is the most popular tourism spot in the world.
It's probably the most secured and most surveilled area of the city. There's more cameras in Manhattan on Times Square. There's more video surveillance. There's more real-time video surveillance because it's already been the target of terror attack attempts. You know, we had the guy with the smoke bomb in the car, and Fazad Shali, and all these type of things. So it's like it's not it's very, very heavily under surveillance. So that does raise a lot of questions. I mean, some people took it as, well, he's just not street smart and that's a stupid thing, or that's where he knows he's going to be or whatever. But there's a lot of questions, and I don't think we've heard the end of what's going to happen. I mean, you have to say it's like there's a lot of different storylines that he's put forward and that prosecutors have put forward about him. We have to see if the jury buys it and what happens. But so far already, there's already several of them that have pleaded guilty. These are the last two that are on the stand right now.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think now that he has connected the dots for the feds, do you think now we are going to see other artists be taken down for things that they probably thought they got away with in the past? So those people that he spoke about, do you think that there are open cases that the feds just couldn't connect the dots to, but now they have?
Well, and that's a great question. Here's the thing with the feds, where with a state case, a crime has to have been committed, and then they go after and they try to solve it and find out who was responsible, and those people usually end up getting arrested. With the feds, it's a different thing. If they have a suspicion that there's criminal activity or that people are acting in concert or acting together, in some type of conspiracy, they can start to investigate. So basically, you don't even know it's possible you don't even know you're a target of an investigation, but you're under investigation, and you don't really know until it's way far, until you're pretty far down that road. People that are not involved with criminal activity have nothing to worry about. People that are not selling drugs, that are not owning or shooting illegal guns, have nothing to worry about. People that are not ordering hits or doing anything like that have nothing to worry about. And the people that do business with them, as long as everything is legit, which it's more and more important now than ever to make sure that it is, because of all the checks and balances and laws and regulations that exist in the music industry, they have nothing to worry about. But what I think is, so remember after the Irving Plaza shooting, there was a thing of there were certain artists from New York that had trouble getting booked for shows because there was a concern that they would bring some type of beef or violence, even if they had no affiliation whatsoever to any of the people that were there that night. There were concerns about violence. Insurance rates went up for those for certain events if certain artists were coming in. Promoters were like, I don't want to mess with it because we got to keep, it's bad. It's basically bad for business. That's the danger for New York right now. And New York has to really, this is where hip hop was born. And I really hope that we'll take the lead as the world and our whole consciousness is evolving into a more peaceful place, a more hopeful place. I hope New York will take the lead with the original concept of hip hop, which is for the community, for the people, for the music, and for the culture, in peace.
We see people have different opinions about should he have snitched, should he have not snitched, right? Some people say, oh, what would you do if your life was on the line and blah, 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 blah. These people robbed you and banged your girl. And some people say, okay, well, you knew the consequences going in and you were a willing participant in this. And according to the rules of the streets, when you're a willing participant in a crime, when you get caught, you're supposed to hold that L. But if you're a civilian and you don't know that the crime is even happening and you get caught up in something you don't know, you rightfully have the right to snitch. That's always been kind of the street code, right? That's what a lot of us have grew up on. A lot of us are cut from that type of cloth. It's just no different than, I'm not gonna, make this a cop thing, but there's a code of blue. There's a plead the fifth code. Like, there's a lot of codes that people live by. You know what I mean?
And there's a lot of codes that people say they live by, but they don't really live by. And you have people, you have people like Hocus the Fourth, Hocus the Fourth, and he fought a case. He had a very severe case brought against him. He fought the case. You have Aaron Gadsden, who did 8 years federal time on a drug charge, stood tall. And then there's other people that you're looking at this whole list of all of these crimes that they've allegedly committed, and they plead guilty to, and then they walk away with like 3 to 5 years, but nobody says they're a snitch. This is a very and lawyers will tell you this, most of their clients facing these kind of charges end up cooperating. If you want to call that snitching, if you want to call that saving your life so you can be back out to be there and try to get a fresh start or whatever, or be there for your family or whatever it is. But that's the facts. This myth that nobody snitches, I think, is a very harmful myth. And quite frankly, I don't think based on the facts it's true.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people that don't snitch.
Right,
There's plenty of
him,
people that don't snitch, And I think that, when you sign up for something, this is what you signed up for, And I think maybe they just, I feel like they should have checked him out. Sorry for the orange. I think they should have checked him out before they put him on. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think just like, it sounds weird, but, you have to watch who you have around you.
Well, it's also the management. I mean, I think about like, there's other artists. I'm not going to name young artists who blew up very, very fast. Had not as that fast, but within the space of a couple years, they start touring. They go to different cities. There's certain people they have to check in with if they're going to perform in that city. It's basically, if you don't pay the particular gang that runs that racket or whatever, you're going to have problems at your performance. There's going to be a shooting, there's going to be violence or whatever. And so what some of the artists do is they will have a person on their team who handles that kind of thing, who's experienced, who's been through it, who knows how the streets work, and they also have professional security. So when they go in, it's like, this is what it is, this is how this has to be handled. But this guy had none of that. There was no father figure, there's no father figure.
But is that an excuse to justify
he's
everything that he's done? Is that an excuse to justify him cooperating?
He used it.
TT, he was his whole thing to me is basically the kind of guy that's like, whatever promotes, whatever I get the attention for. He was working in a deli before all this happened.
So were they saying that he wasn't really a blood before, or like he was?
Yeah, he wasn't a blood before. So Clearly, he stated that on trial. He was never a blood before.
It started with the video shoot.
He was
shoot when he bought the 30
the flags. He was never a gang member before. And so he goes on Instagram and he creates this fake life for himself. And let me also say this too, because a lot of people have been writing under my page, oh, well, you guys promote the music. Let me just say this.
Yeah, will you speak on that?
Let me speak
I'm
on
getting that too.
Let me speak on that. I'm going to keep it 100,000%, and I probably shouldn't say this. We have never put a 6ix9ine record in rotation here at Hot 97. Ever. No. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trent.
We spun the records, but it wasn't in like
never
for the people
put it in rotation.
Explain it to people.
So let me explain what that means. The DJs, if they like a record and it's hot, they have the right to play whatever.
Right. We get some leeway on what we feel is hot in the street.
When it comes to taking a record and putting it rotation and making a record a power record.
Those are the records that you hear every day when there isn't a DJ mixing. They're records that are in the program, that are in the computer. That
like the
play.
Official playlist
That's
of the station,
right?
His records was never added to a playlist. He has never performed on Hot 97 ever. Here's the stance, and shout out to Ebro because we both felt this way. I always felt like this kid was a problem from day one. I always felt like he was a lie and a fraud. And for me, I was like, we can't put our brand on that. Like, I felt it in my spirit. I felt like he was a problem. I felt like Summer Jam would have been a problem. I always knew that he was going to be a bigger issue and his outcome wasn't going to be good because all the energy he was putting out there on the internet.
No, and I when I first asked you about him a couple years ago, it's exactly what you told me. And I said, I mean, again, back as a reporter, street soldier here, I'm like going, this guy's supposedly from Bushwick. He's supposedly a gang member. This just doesn't all add up to me. And yet he's supposedly, remember? And then you were telling me about the music and you like where he doesn't really, things just didn't add up, and you felt like it just wasn't authentic. It wasn't coming from an authentic place.
Yeah, so we did not play his music in rotation here. DJs liked them. They played his records, but in regular rotation,
they were big in the nightclubs. It's funny, like you see,
because their songs are big in the clubs, and that
like sometimes there's like you'll see DJs playing in the club like in the last couple of months. It's still getting played, and you'll see like a mix of people in the crowd. Some people looking like, "What are you doing?" And there's some people that really don't care. Mm-hmm. That was just their song, that they enjoyed the music, you know. And then there's like songs that he has features with other people. And right? And the DJs will play the part with the feature and then take his part out.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Like so you could see the change in the reaction of the crowds in the nightclubs.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, I want to say thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with us today. So what's next with this trial?
Well, these are the last two defendants of this original group of 6 that were indicted in November. There's about 2 more weeks to go on the trial. They are the only 2 out of the 6, including us, including Tekashi, that opted for a trial. So we'll see what the closing arguments say. We'll see what the jury decides, and that should be the end of it. And I hope it's a wake up call too, because at the end of the day, it's like we all love the music, we all love the culture, we love what hip hop stands for. New York should be leading the way in terms of the evolution. I'm so happy right now to see so many great New York artists doing so well, nationally and internationally. I mean, it's fantastic, because remember there was a long period there, people are going like, where are the New York artists? You guys were great back in the day, and there's this whole new fresh energy, and I hope that we'll be able to put the violence behind it so that it doesn't hurt business, and it doesn't hurt New York, and it doesn't hurt New York artists in the long run.
Yeah.
And the fans.
Do you is 6ix9ine expected to take the stand again?
He possibly on Monday, but that's to be determined. But what happens? You asked me about the timeline. So about 2 more weeks for the trial. Then the jury will decide these last 2 defendants. If they are both found guilty, which is what of course what the prosecutors want, and of course what 6ix9ine wants, that's when he can ask, according to the judge. Tekashi can ask for a 5K letter. His attorney can ask for a 5K letter, which would be a letter that the prosecutors write to the judge saying, he gave us all this information. We convicted 5 other people because of his testimony or whatever, and we are recommending, instead of a minimum of 47 years to life sentence, we're recommending anywhere from the bare minimum, which would be time served, to some other number. So the 5K letter basically exempts the judge from the mandatory federal guidelines, because there's federal sentencing guidelines. They look like...
Wow. So the judge can say, I don't have to abide by these guidelines. I can give him what I want.
He can say he was a fantastic witness. He did a great job. He helped us break up this criminal enterprise, helped us stop this gang, and send a strong message because of his notoriety. And we are going to give him time served and
have a good life.
Have a good life, but
so where does he go from here? Because right now he's in witness protection, right?
Well, he's in an ultra secure, undisclosed protection area that the feds have for people that are like super
informing.
And that are also super high risk of being killed.
Okay.
And super valuable to them.
So do they protect him for the rest of his life, or does he go into some type of protective custody?
Well, when he's released, if that's what happens, because it could go either way. We still don't know. If and when he's released, it would be his determination whether he would be offered witness protection, where he'd be given a completely new identity and put somewhere where somebody would know him. I mean, they'd have to do like a lot of tattoo removal and all of that, because otherwise they'd recognize him. I don't think with his personality, just from what I see of him, that would be something, that anonymity is what he would be comfortable with. But if it's a question of anonymity versus, kill on sight order, terminate on sight order, he might take that. So there's a lot of questions here. There's people on my Instagram that are saying, free 6ix9ine, get the music. Other people, there's a million rats crawling around. They're putting all the
rat
all the
emojis,
snatch that he's a snitch. And I think I don't think we know the answer yet. But I think one big lesson we need to take away from this, so we need to be very, very clear, is that any kind of violence, any kind of shootings, any kind of gunplay, leave it in the music, leave it in the art, and take it off the streets, because it's just going to hurt people.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt careers.
And watch who you keep around you.
Oh, yeah.
On that note, Lisa Evers, thank you for stopping by and
Thank
breaking
you.
down the
Thank you,
Tekashi 6ix9ine case. Trends.
Yeah.
You take it from here. I'm done talking. I don't even want to talk
Back
no
in
more
the
for the
mix.
rest of the show.
Back to the party.